Rishona, this is your beautiful design here, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a two-piece set, avocado seed dyed vest and pants.
So this is Textiles and Design,
Yeah.
and you've done everything here.
Yes,
Like, so
absolutely.
the design work, the techniques that go into making the actual garment itself, and I suppose the hardest part would have been the conceptualization. How do you even
Absolutely.
start a project like this?
I really wanted to create some drama or grandeur by breaking the silhouette. As you can see,
This is amazing.
thank you so much. This floral structure, it's created by using wire and little channels. I weave the wire through and basically it holds shape,
Yeah.
basically, yeah. So I was inspired by two different designers as well as the peony flower, but particularly when we look at designers, I was inspired by an atelier called Melzar, and they'd particularly looked at the deconstruction of the normal silhouette. So kind of similar to Iris Van Herpen and designers like those, as well as Sarah Mrad, who had very much looked at like the floral element that I was inspired by, very colorful as well. And I'd wanted to bring in that same sense of color and inspiration into my own work.
So the motivation behind it was to explore the colors, the
Yes.
design.
So I particularly wanted to work with a very organic kind of structure.
Yeah.
So by working with colors that kind of tie back into the earth and by looking at flora and fauna,
Yeah.
I was actually so surprised by the natural dye that was created by the avocado seed, because I'd done a couple of hibiscus dyes and different things to test out the range of color that I could actually get from natural dye. So I'd settled on avocado seed dye because it had created this blush kind of pink that
Yeah.
would really tie into the green,
Yeah.
and was very happy by the result.
So with the natural dyes,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what was it that was kind of motivating you there? Was it more the color range that's possible with natural dyes, or more of the sustainability dimension to it all? I mean, I suppose it's all of it.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
how did you enter into that conversation?
I really was focusing on sustainability with this project. It was the center of my idea and my conceptualization.
Right.
So around 300,000 tons of textiles waste are produced every year in Australia.
That's just
usually
in Australia?
Just in Australia, yeah. That's getting shipped out to other countries or it's getting put into landfill. So with such a range of materials that we could be using, it's very important to actually understand the organic elements that we do have. And a lot of the textiles waste that we do experience is usually polyester or different synthetic fibers that actually take so long to be recycled and actually be processed in that way.
Yeah.
So I think the main purpose of my natural dye was to go back and look and see what we can do with the natural processes that we've actually got.
So talk to me about some of the techniques that you've
Mm-hmm.
used in the garment then.
So we've got the pants.
Yeah.
Let's start with the pants.
These are
We've got-
incredible, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
They're pin tucks. They go all the way from the very top seam
Yeah.
down to the bottom. It's created by basically encouraging fluidity in a very rigid fabric. So it's 100% cotton.
Yeah.
And I basically manipulated it by creating a sort of fluid movement of the fabric. So
Yeah.
I wanted to really break this structure, that usual, even here you can kind of see the structure
Yes.
of the normal fabric.
Yes.
I really wanted to break that by creating fabric manipulation.
Yeah.
And there are so many techniques that we tried as well. We meaning my very loving teacher that I have to give so much credit to. She helped me figure out that different types of fabric manipulation could communicate different things as well.
Perfect.
So I tried smocking, I tried pin tucks, which I ended up
Which is
using.
this, yeah?
Yes, yeah, pin
And
tucks.
the color here in this fabric,
Mm-hmm.
is that, how did you apply the color?
So I used a hand painting technique.
Oh, so it's painted on?
Yeah, it is. And that's basically all the dyed elements of this garment are hand painted.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
So
even
it's like a
the
canvas.
flowers. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to think of it as a canvas, yeah.
Beautiful. So what other techniques are you exploring in the garment here?
So I particularly looked at the flower petals, and so I created these by creating channels around the flower petals' edges, as well as some in the center as well.
Wait, the detail in here is just amazing.
Thank you so much.
This would have taken a long time, I get it.
It really did, yeah.
But so what's most impressive is the inspiration.
Yeah.
Because it's a garment that seems to work in 3 pieces.
Yeah.
A more formal mid piece here, a very elaborate and exciting
Yeah.
theatrical kind of neck piece here, and then something in between for
It's quite interesting that you point that out actually, because I'd always thought of it as 2 different pieces.
Any other techniques that you're using here?
So, well, the lining is actually a hidden thing that observers of the exhibition aren't actually experiencing. So,
A bit of a secret to the garment.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, please show.
So I'd like to show the lining over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
Can I hold it?
it's supposed
look
to,
at that.
it's supposed to emulate the technique of marble dyeing.
Okay.
So marble dyeing isn't actually what I used. I hand painted it. So I wanted to experiment and see what could be done.
Yeah.
Like create a new possibility as well.
It's a beautiful garment. Have you worn it?
Okay, so I've worn it at home and just to check the fitting because it is tailored to me.
Uh-huh.
But I did ask a friend to model it.
Yes.
And she did a brilliant job. We got it to be modeled at Observatory Hill, and the photos were incredible as well.
In terms of your process, what do you think was the most difficult part of your whole design? Was it the conceptual part or the actual techniques that you were exploring? Or some other thing that I'm not thinking of?
So the conceptual part was probably the hardest because I had to land on a very tied together version of what the endless ideas that my whole class had come up with.
Yeah.
So I think I'd come up with like at least 6 different iterations of this model
Yes.
and design,
Yeah.
and I'd figured out that like where I'd land was a very dramatic, explosive experience through textiles.
I'm curious about how after the 6 versions that you've done, how did you end up deciding on this one? Like what separated this one from the others?
I was particularly interested in taking forward this design because it had very much like brought back my initial concept.
Yeah.
So I was very interested once again in sustainable methods and different things like that.
Yeah.
And while I had tried to tie that into the other designs, a lot of them were encouraging the use of synthetic fibers because I couldn't achieve the same look and experience with cottons and
Right.
different organic fibers.
Yeah, and there's something special about this section through here.
Yes. So this technique is called a welt pocket, and they're one of the most technical methods that I used on this entire project.
Yeah.
It took quite a while. Once again, I made many different iterations of these pockets, and I figured out so many different types of methods to like actually bring out the neatness.
Yeah.
When we create welt pockets, you kind of have to take that giant leap of faith
Right.
and cut through this like entire bodice piece to create the opening. And that was like one of the most thrilling experiences because I was so nervous. Yeah.
I think a lot of students would love to hear about maybe one of the real challenges that you came across
Yes,
in doing a
absolutely.
design like this. What was the hardest part?
With many creative people, I feel like it's very hard to wrap all the expansive ideas that we have into one neat little box at the end. So I found that pretty difficult because I'd come up with so many different ideas and different parts of ideas that I'd wanted to manipulate into one. I'd suggest don't lose the essence of your actual idea.
Yeah.
Because that's so, like if you have a very strong and like keen idea that you're very passionate about, I think kind of allow that passion to take place.
What do you think is your main piece of advice for students thinking about going into a project like this for their HSC?
I think being very grounded in your idea is such an important thing. Communicating your idea and making sure you can explain it to someone who hasn't experienced it at all the whole way through, to make sure that they can also call you out if you need any edits or anything for your portfolio especially. I got different people to read my portfolio throughout the entire time to make sure that it was really striking that point and getting it across. Yeah.
So being open to the critique
Yes,
and going for the
absolutely.
critique far and wide.
Absolutely, yes. And that really helped me develop my idea as well.
What new techniques did you actually learn as a part of this process?
Basically everything about this project was something out of my comfort zone. I was so inspired to break this boundary and learn new skills and everything that I could actually take into the future.
The whole feedback process, it can be a bit tough to hear people criticising your work. How did you respond to that whole process? And what did you learn about the process because of the feedback?
I think throughout an iterative process, whether that be through textiles or whether that be through another creative subject, it's so important to receive that feedback with a very open mind.
Yeah.
Because much of the time the teacher is guiding your creative process into something that can actually work and be practical. My teacher had been particularly very supportive of this process and had given so much different feedback from the small details to kind of the bigger picture as well when I was conceptualizing. So I think being very receptive and actually focusing on improving rather than taking it as a setback is very important.
It takes a certain sort of bravery to put your work in front of people and have that feedback conversation. For those students who are worried about it not being perfect enough or good enough to put in front of their teacher, what would you say to them?
I think good enough is a very subjective phrase. No matter what you're creating, you're also doing it under a lot of pressure as a Year 12 student. So I think believing in yourself and creating something that you believe in is like the most important part. So whatever you create, you should be very, very proud of yourself.
Well, it's an extraordinary outcome. It really is a beautiful piece of, it's a beautiful garment all
Thank you
up.
so much.
I can see in here all of the techniques are really paying off. The thing I personally respond to the most, and I'm not really a fashion person, as you can tell, not really a fashion person, but what I'm seeing here is a garment that tells a beautiful story of making and of sustainability, and that's a reason to keep looking.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations, yeah?
Thank you.